You know, they stuck at that. They ran that project with that exact bike for 3 years.
Mm.
And I suppose the kind of next question is, occasionally this does happen with brands, right? Like Gas a few years ago produced an engine. It had like a side valve thing. It didn't make very good power. They couldn't do anything about it because they just couldn't.
Mm.
A few years later, they bring a new engine. They bring a new design, new philosophy, and they try again. But BMW kind of just went after 3 years, well, that's shit. That doesn't work that well. We're not going to admit it doesn't work that well. We're just going to push it on to someone else. And we've bought this thing over here. They can have a go with it. And it probably still won't work because, well, there's some fundamental design flaws going on.
Mm.
Why do you think they did that? Why didn't they do like a KTM does or someone else where they just go, okay, we made a mistake. We're going to live, we're going to learn, and we're going to keep trying to win. Because they had a lot of good stuff in their hands, right? Like they had a great team, a team that was really professional. Like I remember all of the stuff around the team being really, really good. Like the bikes looked great. The presentation was really good. All the media was pretty good. They had good people doing press launches, and you could go and buy one from a jazzy BMW showroom and like feel like $1 million. I mean, I don't know what that experience was like. I never bought one, but had so much good stuff in that corner as a big corporate company that they can probably afford to swallow the cost of going down that one bad manufacturing route in the same way that they ultimately ended up doing. They could have just kind of almost started again. And
Yeah, you know, honestly, I'd love to be able to sit down with people that were involved in. I guess it would need to be a boardroom position, you know, to know what was the thought process there in general, you know, because again, you know, I'd have to think back, but if I remember rightly, you know, KTM were very much on the up and up, you know, and it was the time when I think, you know, KTM were Europe's largest off-road motorcycle manufacturer, but I think BMW were Europe's largest motorcycle manufacturer. And, you know, whether it was a kind of, you know, you've done this, we'll do that tit for tat thing, I'm not sure. But, you know, KTM were marching forward. They had very clear, you know, goals and ambitions. And, you know, if you compare where they're at now to where they were then, you know, it's night and day different, you know, night and day different. And a good example of you know, ambition together with the right technical know-how, you know, great marketing, you know, the whole thing works, you know, and it's grown and it's got bigger and stronger, and they've, you know, they've expanded it, you know, into road in a, you know, in a massive way, but yet they've stayed who they are in off-road, and they've brought in, you know, other brands to the sort of the portfolio, you know. So I think you know, you can contrast now, you know, doing things in the right way. And I think maybe BMW, you know, it was a case of, right, well, they've done this, so if we do that, does that somehow counteract, or does that, you know? And again, I don't know what the thought processes were, you know, on a boardroom level, because it seems a little bit strange, and maybe there are some parallels from the outside to the Triumph situation now, like why are you doing it? Like, you know, you're good where you are, you know, that market, you know, those products. Like, you know, off-road is a different world, a very difficult world to get right in some ways. You know, we can also, it's easy, you know, just copy the best bits of everybody else's product, you know, but that only helps you create a good prototype, you know, a good prototype to a good production bike, you know, then all the sales that's needed and everything else, you know, it's obviously difficult. And it just shows that, you know, I think, you know, BMW obviously wanted to achieve whatever it was they wanted to achieve. You know, whether it was a bit of getting back at, or whether it was just at the time off-road, you know, was a popular place to kind of get involved. You know, Aprilia were getting involved. You know, and again, you know, a product that was very sort of different. You know, again, just copy what works. You know, which is not what Aprilia did. They went, no, we're going to do a twin cylinder. You know, so you had that twin cylinder offering from Aprilia. You had, you know, BMW doing things the way they were doing things, you know. So in I guess in sort of BMW's defense, it wasn't like they were the only ones that just went, I know, we need to, you know, square the round wheel. That's going to be better. You know, others tried different approaches. But yeah, like you say, you know, they kind of gave up on the you know, being there as BMW. Now, whether that was, and again, I don't know, how the decision making, how it works from, from a board perspective, but ultimately, a lot of these projects, let's say it costs I don't know, 500 million a year, 200 million a year. I don't know what it would cost, but that will be signed off, I would imagine, for 2 or 3 years, with a review, and a likelihood of, return on investment, and if they can just all see it circulating in the wrong direction, in the same way that a magazine publisher would just say, that magazine is never coming back. There's 30 years of history in, practical boat renovation magazine, but there's not an appetite for renovating boats at the moment. On a spreadsheet, just stick a line through it, kill it. We're not going to keep that magazine alive. That needs to make profit. And I would imagine it's a similar situation. Ultimately they signed off a budget for X number of years. They reviewed it and it wasn't worth, going again. But then somewhere along the line, they decided to buy Husqvarna.
For a big amount of money as well. I mean, I looked it up. They paid 93 million euros for it, and they sold it for £1.
Really? Yeah.
They sold it to KTM for £1. So basically, like the nominal share, which is
but again, I don't understand why I guess they must have felt that was the right moment to get involved. But again, I think it just highlights that, the want to do something, and having the money to back it up isn't enough. Like you need to want to do it. Money, yes, it's important. Obviously when you're buying big companies and you need to make big R&D investments and you need to employ, hundreds or thousands of people, you can't do it on, IOUs and stuff like that. But, all of the best will, all of the money is not enough. You've got to have the right people. And again, I think if you look at KTM, they seem to get it right. They've expanded and grown, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who say, well, not every product has been fantastic, but they are launching a huge amount of products through street and off road. You're going to get a few ugly ducklings along the way, but generally the majority of what they're doing is working. But yet,
and I think the thing that's really impressive with KTM is like there's a really clearly defined direction with every bike. Like if you ride a 1290 and you ride a 390 and then you go and ride a dirt bike, they all have a similar feeling. Like they all feel like there's something off-road about them. They're slightly angry. That's just how they are, And I think that's also really impressive. Like it speaks of a company that has a really clear vision of where they're going and what they're doing. Whereas the way
and look at, whether it's been Husaberg, Husqvarna, or now Gas, it's not like, let's bring this brand into the let's say into the portfolio and let's have a good think about it, and we'll tick along for a couple of years as we are. It's like, no, take that, do this. This is our direction, and it works, and Mr. Pira is very clear that the big costs are in R&D, developing that new power plant. Once you've got that, it's the same as the German auto industry. Look at sort of Volkswagen groups, same engine and sort of powertrain platform, goes into Volkswagens and Skodas and Audis and all that. And they're doing what makes sense. They're taking an investment and they're dividing it by, the more brands you divide it by, the less that investment cost is per brand. Which makes total sense. But it just, going back to the Husky thing when BMW took it over, sometimes big corporations will buy a company just to take them out of the market, and it was, the seeming sort of lack of not, where the hell are they going with it, almost looked like they bought it just to take it out of the market. But yet it was a market that they were trying to get into, not that they were already in, and they were trying to take a competitor out, So it was strange. And like I say, I'd love to be able to sit down and have a couple of beers with somebody that was, maybe even the person that went, yeah, we're going to do this. And then the person that went, yes, that new engineering concept is the right one for us,
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. You can watch or listen to every episode of the Brake Magazine podcast on our Patreon page, or listen to previous seasons on your favorite podcast app.